right, it is now time for raising funds for world domination, day number 214. So we'll continue with the daily update. So in the renoviction situation, there's no updates on any pending appeals. I do have an update for the Shopify Store. So the appeal I submitted my third and final appeal after going through, watching some tutorial videos and scrubbing through all my policies and getting my writing an About Us page and all that kind of stuff. I submitted my last appeal and it was denied. So the Google Merchant Center is now suspended. So that still means the Shopify account works. So Shopify is fine. It's when the products get into Google Merchant Center, which they have to in order to get them shown on YouTube. So I should probably indicate that here. So you can still buy stuff on the store, but I won't make sales because no one knows that the store exists because they don't see the products. So I don't know. Maybe there's some other way I can get the suspended. I can get another appeal or something, or I don't know. I have to look into it. It would have been nice to get that finished, get that working for Christmas, but. So I get to get some orders in. But I'll have to return to that. And I don't know, at some point it's like it's already, even if I get it to work with the views I have, even having like millions of views, I only get like, a handful of sales. It'd be like a few $100 or something. And the amount of effort that you have to put in to like jump through all the hoops to meet whatever Google's vague criteria is significant. What's up, like 64? How's it going? Should do a video on your experience with the Google Merchant Account appeal process. From what I've seen, there's like 1 million. If you search for like Google Merchant Center misrepresentation stuff, there's actually a lot. There's quite a few people who've experienced that. Although that content, those videos aren't really getting a lot of views. Like there's people who made like their entire career, their entire YouTube channel is just focusing on trying to appeal these Merchant Center bans. And it's created like this whole like sub economy where you hire someone to get your account unbanned by Google, and the policies change all the time and stuff. I probably won't make that video because a lot of other people have. I did mention it actually in my most recent marketing video. I think that's probably good enough. I got enough complainy stuff to cover in videos. So yeah, that's tying up some loose ends. Yeah, so I guess we'll continue with development of the terminal block mining simulation game. So last night I did some changes. Made some changes to the way that events get passed around between threads. And I was looking into it. I guess what I'll probably work toward first is just kind of refactor some of the classes and models and stuff so it can theoretically support two different player objects on the screen at once. Because right now there are several things that depend on the player's location. One is the chunk loading, and one is the chunk initialization. And those two threads rely on knowing the player's current position, because what they do is when if the player is near something, in terms of figuring out which chunks to load next, the chunks closest to the player are prioritized. And so that'll have to be generalized, because if there are multiple independent players on screen, they can be at different locations on the map. So that's one thing. There's a few other things like I need to add some indirection. Yeah, there's quite a few small things to do before multiplayer can work at all. I have to add some like indirection. Like this thing here. So instead of just a one hard-coded location, when you first start up, it'll send a message to get basically like a list of pointers to figure out where the current player's inventory should be and whatnot. Barack Obama says the GOAT. The GOAT indeed. So I think one of the next things I'll do so I have some other multiplayer, some like starting point of multiplayer code that's not merged in. And for some of the changes I make here, I have to like manually merge them in to keep them compatible. So I guess I'll try to work toward like actually merging that like templated multiplayer stuff in as well. how to index block data in the database so it can be quickly loaded whenever the player is in multiple dimensions. I guess there's a few answers to that. So I have the in-memory chunks class. So for this, I initialize it with like a chunk. So like in Minecraft, there's the concept of a chunk. I just made it like an arbitrary size you can initialize. It's actually quite smaller than, or I guess I can show you what the size is. So there's actually the size. It's 3 on the X, 3 in the Y, 5 in the Z, and 1 in the other dimension. And so if you try when you for the in-memory chunks class, I should probably rename this like chunk loading. Chunk memory model thread or something. So in this I guess, so this variable here contains the set of regions of space that need to be in memory. So as soon as I need something, it's put in there. Like as soon as the map loads, before you can load the map, you actually put something in that, say like, okay, load this area into memory. And then that'll either come from the database or it comes over the network from the server. And the first step of getting that, so the map is just some arbitrary flat plane. First thing it does is it takes that region and it dissects it into a set of chunks, and then the chunks load individually. And then there's these other two variables here to keep track of which ones are like currently loading, and then also chunks that are still loaded but are not needed is in here. That's kept track of. So as you move around the map area, the chunks on the other side will drop off, and eventually those just get forgotten. So that way the memory doesn't grow without bound. And you asked about indexing quickly. So there's forget where that is. Maureen, how's the DB set up so you can quickly get block data around? in terms of database tuning, actually, I think when I first started streaming development of this, I have some streams where I went over the process of like trying to get indexes and stuff to speed that up, because that was one of the initial bottlenecks. In terms of database tuning, that I think probably will be an issue as it scales. But I think the model is simple enough overall. Like it's arbitrary regions, it's arbitrary chunks. Like every block in the universe can be just simplified down to an ordered pair. So like X, Y, Z, W, and then the table itself just becomes like one big giant table. And I have been thinking, I think it likely would be possible maybe to implement like views or something where I can still maintain like the exact same interface, but then for like, you could have a performance tuned thing. So like for so like as the universe grows, what you could do, because they're all spatially related, instead of having one thing be a coordinate in the table, you could just take the coordinate, like for example x equals 0. What you could do is just partition the universe into, instead of one table, you have like one table for every x value. So then one dimension just becomes one table. And then when you write the query, instead of having the parameter for saying like where x equals, what you would do is just not have that, and then you would just supply a different table name. I think that would actually give you better performance, but I don't have a ton of experience on that kind of specific kind of database tuning. But I think as long as the underlying model is simple, just having like a large number of ordered pairs, and then I guess you could probably, like when you're loading an area in the map, a lot of data would go to block coordinates if you have one row per block like that. Yes, it is. That's one aspect of this that's you could say is wasteful, and I think does actually make it quite slow. The Psychedelic Primate says, "Hi, noob here. Love the channel. Thanks. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoy it." Yeah, I think like I said though, and I mean there could even be, you could even imagine like well, I mean to keep things simple, so like let's say you have let's say you do shard it out that way, where everything with an x equals 0 value is stored in one table. By doing that, by going from like an explicit coordinate value in it as a column in the table to just putting it in the table name, then well, in an infinite universe, there's going to be, you know, an unbounded number of records in the x equals 0 table, because it's just whatever free parameters for x, y, z, w. By doing that transition, by changing it from the value to the table name, you're saving, your theoretical savings is infinite. So every single comparison that you would do with x equals 0 and all the data that would be there, and you could extend that to, I guess, to whatever is necessary. So if your universe grows to become so big, sufficiently big, you could have like, thousands and thousands and thousands of tables that all just have like the coordinate in the table name. And I think that would work pretty well, because that's going to mean, like, as it gets paged out and cached to disk and stuff like that, if you pull something from the x equals 0 table, that's going to pull it into cache, and that it'll probably have good performance. So you'll be like, if you're always hitting, if you start at the origin of the game, you don't need to know anything that's at the x equals 999 table. That would be one way, and then of course you could pair it, so you could do I guess it's interesting to think about the other extreme, which is imagine that every single coordinate is stored in its own table that has one record. So you could just have one table so if you want, like, coordinate 1, 2, 3, then you just select star from the 1, 2, 3 table, and then it just returns the first record. And that would work. Then I guess your performance is basically just kind of bottlenecking down to just like basic file access times. So I guess you could imagine a scenario where you do it that way for for an actually massive universe. So then you have but then of course at that point you'd be so extreme that I think the table overhead would become the bound. Actually, probably a pretty good compromise might be going with like every coordinate but one, like the last one or something. That might get you optimal savings. I guess given a specific world size, I mean, you could even have like some sort of a vacuumer process that it continuously analyzes the database, and then when the database gets too big, it just does that automatic sharding process, and then you could even have like a table. You could have some indirect table process that it goes through, where the input is you just say I want to select these regions, and then it figures out what the right table name is, and there's some kind of dynamic compression thing going on in the background. It's like analyzing, like in this game, with going around with the X and Y, or X and Z. The X and Z dimensions have tons and tons of different values, but there's not many changes in the Y value unless you actually start moving in the right direction and generating the world there. Oh yeah, I was going to mention this function, which is so given a coordinate, this just gives you the I index for how it's laid out. But yeah, right now everything is just stored in one table, and I just do here's inserting. It literally just iterates over every block in the cube. and does a single insert. I remember I tried a couple of variations of all these prepared statements and stuff, and I settled on this because it seemed to be the fastest. Oh yeah, and here's the get blocks and region. So just very, very simple. Let me think. So the next thing, maybe store its chunks and have an index key that is the interleaf bits of the coordinates of the chunk called z value sometimes. Then you could even get multiple nearby chunks with the range query. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that would probably also be a good idea. Yeah, you could even have yeah, I guess like you could even have like multiple of those for like if you select a big region or a large region. Like kind of like a dynamic chunk size. Yeah, there's lots of optimization possibilities there. I probably won't commit to any of them now, but that's why I like trying to reduce things down to simple models, because if the model is simple, then and if you realize there's performance problems later, it's very easy to go back and fix them. Okay, so what I want is a class like this. Where does this thread get initialized? Let's see what that does. Right, that works. Saga Weird says, hey, how's it going? Okay, that should clean up starting of the thread for the client context. Wow, that just works. That's good. Now, can I pass the server context this way? Now we'll have to go back and update all those. Chat is very quiet tonight. Where does that thread get started? All right, let's see if that runs. All right, a few more incremental steps toward fixing up the bootstrapping process. I think historically, because I had with the initialization, I used to do everything in the constructor, and then I had to add those init methods. But then the issue was I was calling the init methods from a different thread, and that was causing synchronization and deadlock problems. Now that's been resolved. So now I can iron out some of the other race conditions in synchronization with so like when you run the client, this client here has a client and a server in it, and the message passing just like takes an object in memory and just sends it to the server in memory. So that goes through an interface, a client-server interface. With the networking version, it goes through a serialization process, and that actually goes through the TCP stack, so that there's a different interface class for that. But they have like a mutual dependency on the client and server class, so that was a source of a few bugs. Yeah, I think that class that I currently have called a client server interface. I'll probably end up renaming that to world connection, and then that'll become the template for So you'll set up this client and server. Yeah, for single player, you'll set up the client and server. It's a little bit confusing because if I support a generic number of world connections, then you'll have a client and a server for a local connection, world connection, and then for the remote case, you'll have only the client. Let me think. Tasks I can do in 20 minutes. one thing I could think about adding is when you craft something, I really think it should select that. Cybernetic Logos says, hello, Robert. How's it going? My name changed? Oh yeah, there's like a display name on YouTube, and then there's your username. And for some reason it switches between them. It switched like at least like 4 times. I started to learn algorithms. Nice. Now you can get lost and have fun optimizing merge sort and learn about the 3 satisfiability problem and NP completeness. So I guess one issue that I'll have is if I simply add, when I add an item, I don't know what index it is. Or I guess maybe I do. I think I just do this. Would you come inside using C++? Consider, that makes more sense. Would I consider using C++ for this project? No. talked a bit before about my reasons for choosing Java. It's mainly just a process of elimination. I didn't use C++ just because it's, I think it's, number one, managing data structures and memory manually. It's just, it's too much work. I'd have to run the program with Valgrind and stuff all the time. Operator overloads. I don't really think it adds that much. Having memory managed for me is way more important. Use a smart pointer, but you still have to think about access violations and Java also has like a lot of pretty good data structures and things like hash algorithms, and all that kind of stuff is already done for you. C++ is also like, it's an unlearnably complicated language. Even since I stopped learning it, like in 2011, they've just keep jamming more features into the language. Access violations? What access violations? Like segmentation faults. And stack corruptions and all sorts of fun. Kind of hilarious. I love their strategy. What do you mean? What do you mean by there in that statement? Who's there? Okay, that will give me the index where it was added. I had rice with curry sauce and kimchi and bananas for dinner. What did you have? I think I had frozen pizza. And then for lunch, what did I have? I had an apple and a couple other things, I think. Piece of pie. I have a C++ consortium that keeps just stuffing new features. Oh, it's hilarious that they keep adding stuff, yeah. Yeah, it just, it almost seems like it's like a pathological exercise in like obsessively trying to extend this language for no real benefit. Like I think they're just making the language so complicated, no one will take these new extensions seriously. Because every time you add a new feature, there's a combinatorial explosion of like if you try to write a compiler, you'll know this firsthand. Where like let's say you write a compiler for a C-like language or C++ like language, like it just you actually build your own language from scratch. Let's say you implement like types. So you have no arrays. You just have like the simplest functions with integer and stuff, and then let's say you add like double and character. Now you have all these like side corner cases to think of, like how does the stack work when you have an array of characters, and what about like long doubles and stuff. And then let's say you add a feature like type def. Now you have to think about the interactions of type def between all this stuff. Now let's say you add arrays. Now you have to think about all the variable passing in functions, but you also have to consider how that interacts with your type def. And all these features interact with each other. So as you add more features to the language, every incremental feature interacts with every single other feature that's ever existed in the language. And then you end up with really crazy bugs. Ordered a pizza and a calzone to my house. Nice. Feel very identity, only two meals per day. Don't call my stuff pathological. You mean the C++? Oh, are you on the C++ consortium? You keep adding stuff? Eat rice and microwave soap for dinner. I don't know if it's a typo or a joke or what. In bodybuilding, it's considered important to maximize protein. Feeding opportunities with 20-25 dose dispensed across 46 meals per day. That's a lot of meals. That's a lot of work. I talked to someone once who was like actually a pro athlete, and I can't remember what he was doing, but I think he said he actually he hated the eating routine because you had to like constantly eat all the time, and it was just constantly eating carbs and protein. One of my favorite languages is Lisp. So that's pretty much all you do in the language. I don't really follow, but microwave spicy soap. Oh yeah, you mean soup? You misspelled it 2 times, so I wasn't sure. Now the consortium just approved it. I'm a C++ imperialist. Oh, okay. Well, once we descend into programmer civil war, I may be fighting against you. Never understand people being annoyed at eating. Seen as a primary human joy. He was saying his complaint was he had to constantly eat when he was not hungry, and the food he ate was also it was very plain. He ate past the point of enjoyment because he had to maintain muscle mass and stuff. Yeah, I guess you can, if you look up what pro athletes, how they eat, they do not eat for enjoyment. It's purely it's a mathematical optimization. Friend sounds like he was trying to bulk. Carbs are important. Opposite is true for athletes. He did I can't remember what he said he was training for. I know he was for a little while he was an actual pro hockey player. Like he got paid to play hockey for a little while. But he might have been training to a run or something. I can't remember the details. I thought it was soap, and it is soup. Okay. Okay, maybe is English not your first language? I guess that could make sense. I would not expect many English speakers to make the mistake of saying they're eating soap instead of eating soup. Adding features is the definition. Is the definitive feature of OISO. I'm not familiar with that acronym or that word, OISO. Not your first language? Oh, okay. That makes a bit more sense. It's hard to follow chat sometimes. It's not a very information-rich interface. Bodybuilders will do bulk and cut cycles over the course of a year to build muscle mass, stay lean. Yeah, it's not something that I have some vague knowledge of that stuff, but always confusing words like history and story. Yeah, it's hard enough communicating in chat, but I would imagine it's. I learned a second language. I learned French, but I never use it. And honestly, like the verb conjugation and stuff is, it's really tough to learn a second language. How many lines of functional code are you at now? I'm not sure. I could probably use a find command. Actually, I don't know. It's hard to say. A lot of stuff that I do is actually like rewriting stuff into a better form, deleting code, and I was going to test this thing. So if I press C, nice. Look at that. When I craft the item, it selects the item. It's a good usability feature. French isn't a second language for you? It was for me. In Quebec, it's their official language. And they make everyone feel bad if you don't speak it there. First language, Spanish. Oh, okay. Interface is way more detailed now. Since the famous Calzone stream. Yeah, it's when people come in and say that they're like, wow, this has changed a lot. That's good, because to me it seems like it never changes and it's always the same. Quebec French is hilarious. I don't know. I don't even really know enough about it. I don't know how to distinguish between like Quebec French and like, I don't know, non-real French or France French. I know the existence of differences, but no idea what they are. See, I think there was something I was going to do. Quebec French, grotesque sounded. Interesting. Yeah, I guess I could imagine that. In Paris, like Paris French, I think is a bit more, I don't know, deliberate and careful in their pronunciation. But Quebec French, I think they seem a bit more lazy. Quebec French takes all the economic gains from normal French. I don't know how that would be possible. A language to take economic gains from another language. Okay, I think I accomplished everything I wanted. Also reached 1200 at chess. Nice. Congratulations. You're much higher than me. I have a 0. Maybe that'll be enough to impress your crush. I think it would be. I think you got the right mindset. All right. We're at 11:48 p.m. I made some incremental progress on refactoring the bootstrapping process. I'll probably merge that in tonight, actually. So I got to make some local changes with the bit of multiplayer code that I have and test that. And crafting, the UI for crafting is a bit better, making it actually select. So you're going to actually see when you crafted something. That'll make it a bit more clear. Let me think. yeah, there's a long list of little things to do before even anything resembling multiplayer really exists. And then even when I have most of that stuff, oh yeah, there's just so much work. I need to refactor how the events work. Well, even now, I basically finished how the user interface threads communicate with each other for UI events. That's mostly refactored. But then when some of the model state, like I guess even the player position, for example, that's going to have to be stored on the server. Right now it's in the client model. So when you try, for example, when you try to move, it should be the server that determines whether you can move or not. Right now it's actually the client doing that. So that's a whole problem. The next issue is there's no concept of a tick in the game. So that's going to have to exist. And then after that, there's also no transaction resolution. So if two players try to move to the same place, they will overwrite each other, which is a problem. So yeah, lots of stuff to implement. Have you had two players on the stream yet? No, there's not enough. Not enough implementation support for that yet. Anyway, we'll leave it there for tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow night for day 215. All right, have a good night, guys.